All right. Well, who are we? I'm Corey Roth. I do some work with Hitachi Consulting. And here's how you can get a hold of me. There's my email address and Twitter. You can tweet me as we speak. And when I'm not doing Office 365, I like, things like the beach and things like that, right? So we just keep it short and sweet.
Fair enough.
Who doesn't like the beach, right?
Yeah. Fair enough. I'm Matt McDermott. I'm a SharePoint MVP. I also work for a company called Aptalon as a consultant. I deploy SharePoint and Office 365. I also train with Critical Path Training. And if you want to reach me, it's matthew@aptalon.com. You just got to remind me you were in this session so I remember which lies I have to justify. And you can always catch me on Twitter at MatthewMcD. And if not Office 365, then I'd probably be somewhere with this girl, either on a beach or just having her stare at me with her moony eyes.
Did you change the picture?
So yeah. All right, on with the show.
Let's do it. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, as you know, we're talking about search, and search has evolved a lot over the years, right? So there's 4 kind of key extensibility points that we want to share with you today. Now, I think we probably need to do our obligatory who's on-prem, who's not on-prem. Is it time for our survey,
So how many of you are 100% SharePoint on-prem?
Look at that crowd.
How many of you, keep your hands up if you are SharePoint 2013? Outstanding. Okay. Now, how many of you are 2010? Okay, this is as much exercise as you're going to get today, I promise.
Well,
okay?
Besides lifting the beer up and down, right?
That's good. So hopefully those 2010 folks, you'll see some of the sexy stuff you get in 2013. How many of you are Office 365 only? And how many of you are Office 365 and a little bit on-prem?
Yeah, good number.
Cool.
Good number. So,
cool. Okay, that helps.
The nice thing is, a lot of the stuff we're talking to everybody today. So just because you hear the first thing and it's not for you, don't hit the happy hour yet. Just hold on, because we got more content for you, okay? So we're going to be talking about things that apply to all of you, well, except for you 2010 people who...
no, because they can consume a 2013 service,
well, they can
and
do
then
that.
they get it all.
They can do that. So gives you motivation and selling points to tell your senior management, right?
That's right.
Okay, so back from that aside, what are we talking about? Well, I'm going to start you off with query rules. And query rules are a fun way to do more with search. We'll talk about what those are. And then I'm going to show you how to start transforming the way your search results look. Maybe you want to customize the way things look when you come back and you get your search results, right? We've been doing this the hard way for years. Now it's easier. So we'll show you how to do that. We'll do some live demos. Then Matt.
I'll do how to do external data. So using BCS to extend the reach of SharePoint Search beyond what it does out of the box. And then we'll finish off with content enrichment, which is a sexy little service that you can attach to a SharePoint 2013 on-prem farm and augment your search results with external data from any source you choose. It only works on-prem, but the last demo of the day is going to be how you can do this in Office 365, just thinking about the problem in a different way.
Yeah, it's a really unique situation. We're looking forward to showing you that because it's definitely a way of thinking out of the box, and that's sometimes what we have to do as cloud developers, right? So let's get right to it. So who here has heard of IFTT, right? Kind of a buzzword. No one? No Android users? One, right?
It's the guys that left. They had an if this and that, and it was if this happy hour, then go.
Then go.
And they all left. Yeah.
So query rules, I like to say, are the if this, then that of SharePoint. Because what it lets us do is, if these conditions are met, then go do this. And so this is really powerful because it changes what you can do, and you can capture and give your users better search results because, let's face it, you know more than they do, right? Yeah, okay. So why exactly do we care about them? So we can use them to promote key results. So you've heard of best bets before probably, right? You've been doing those. It's been around since 2007. This is better than that. We can fix the query. It turns out they might search for one thing, but they actually mean something else. And you know the business context of the user, so you can fix that. Of course, we can change the way search results are sorted and ranked. And we can add things and promote things. Now, where can we use this? SharePoint Online and SharePoint 2013. So when SPO got some love in the 2013 wave, this was one of the features is there. So we'll be demoing that today using SPO.
Right.
So what do I mean by if this? Lots of things you can do. But mostly what these all say is, does the query match some kind of keyword, or does it match some action word? Today I'll show you some keywords and how I transform that. And then Matt's going to transform you later, or show you later on one of his demos, kind of putting all this together on how we can create action words and actually almost create our own search syntax. Very cool stuff. What can we do? Well, we can add a promoted result. Again, that's kind of your new form of a best bet. We can add a result box. So what does that mean? We can actually go say, maybe you search for something like a department, and we actually go out and find out the people that are in that department at the same time, while still giving results for the documents on whatever they queried. This is a way to add extra search results. And then sometimes, you go, hey, user, you are so off on what you're searching for. Let me fix it for you, right? You didn't really mean compensation plan. You meant benefits or whatever we call it in our organization, right? So that's the power of this, and that's why I really like query rules. Y'all want to see it? All right, I like the enthusiasm. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to switch over to our demo machine.
Wrong one.
It sure is. So don't, spoilers, so I'm an 8. Okay. Don't pay attention to that. All right. So turns out there's some query rules built in already, and maybe you've stumbled upon them on accident. But a lot of times, here we're at the conference, we're making slide decks, things like that. So SharePoint, they thought, all right, let's go put some of those kind of terms in there. So maybe we're working for the marketing department, we're working on a new campaign or something like that. We need to do some search for a marketing deck. So let's do that. I'm going to type marketing and then deck. And what it's actually going to do is transform and go, hey, did you mean PowerPoint presentations? Well, yeah. So I didn't actually have to type marketing PowerPoint. It just came up and it worked. So that's an example of one out of the box. Now, that may not be all that useful, but now you can start seeing how we can actually transform this and make better decisions. Let's do one more example that's built in. Let's look for some information on our acquisition that we're worried about. So we're going to talk about our acquisition a lot in this demo. And I'm looking for some press release. Well, a lot of times, people like to abbreviate things, so we'll just do PR. And, it turns out it actually is smart enough to go, hey, here's the press release for that acquisition that you're looking for. So that's an example of a result block that's been promoted. And you also see this additional text up here, and I'll show you how to do that. So built in out of the box, you can start doing that. It probably is already active on your own SharePoint environment today, right?
Yeah, so if you were in an insurance company and you typed auto, you could force it down the automobile line of business.
Exactly.
So you could force the search to different sectors of your business just based on keywords.
Right, and you can even do it based on the context of who the user is and stuff when you really want to start tailoring your results.
Nice.
So let's do one more example. Let's create our own keyword. Now, let's picture this scenario, and we're in the middle of an acquisition. And it turns out that Contoso, everybody knows Contoso by now, they're actually in the process of acquiring Litware. Shh. No one's supposed to know that, right? So they have a project code word that they call Thunder. So Project Thunder is actually the acquisition of Litware. Now, y'all are under NDA, right?
You checked that box. You read everything in, checked the box, moved on. Got your shirt. If you got a shirt, you're under NDA.
Oh, so you're under NDA. All right, then we can show you how we do this. Okay, so let's go to our search settings. And we'll give that just a moment to show up. And then we're going to go down to query rules, just to show you where it's at. And on this interface, it's a little clunky, and that's why it takes a second to come up. So first thing we have to do is we actually have to select a result source. Now, result sources are groups of search queries. They used to be called content sources, and they kind of get merged into scopes, if you remember those from the 2010 world. So we have to select one. I'm going to select local SharePoint results. It'll take another second to pop in. And then we start getting our listing of existing result sources. But we're going to create one. And I'm just going to call this rule Thunder, because that's what we were calling it. And in this case, I'm going to choose query contains an action term. So this means if we see this action, let's go do something else, basically. So I'm going to click on that. And then you can specify a list of things that we want to capture. So in this case, I'm going to do Thunder. Now, that's the if of the query rule, right? Now we need to do the then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change the ranked results by changing the query. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take anything that comes in for Thunder, I'm actually going to change that and search for our acquisition. So we'll give that just a second to come up. Wait for it.
Wait, working on it.
How's the internet been for y'all this week? Yeah, sorry.
Still there.
Sorry, slower term. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to change this to litware, and I'm going to change it to acquisition, and then I'm going to change it to subject terms, which I can just grab it right here, right? Actually, I'll type it out because that's easier. And if we test it, if all goes right, did I type it incorrect? Did I type acquisition?
I-T-I-O-N, S-I-T-I-O-N.
S-I-C, that's why we're doing this all together. Thank you. Thank you. Give that guy a t-shirt.
All right. That's what I need.
So now we're going to change the query and what the user is doing. But I'm also going to say, hey, let's add a warning at the top that says, let's put a nice scary message from Legal. So we'll do something like warning, do not share results with anyone. And I could even go even further and put a link to legal site or something like that. I don't have that handy right now, but that's fine. So you can actually put an actionable link on this as well. Otherwise, it'll just display the text. So let's save that. And we'll save the whole query rule. There's also some other settings in there underneath called publishing. So if it's only active for a period of time, you could do that as well, right? So if it's only active for a day or a week or whatever like that, we can do that as well. So we'll save our new query rule, and now we're going to go test it inside the interface first. The interface gives you a way to kind of troubleshoot things, and then we'll actually see our results in action. Okay, so here you see this test a query, and I'm just going to type in what a user might type in. So if I type in Thunder proposal, if it worked right, it should update the page and show me the query rules that matched. And there you see, here's Thunder, and here's the terms that it hit on, and here's the actual query it goes and executes.
So you could use that if somebody came back to you and said, I got this really weird result. You could put in their result, you could put in their query in there and see why it went awry.
Exactly. So it gives you a way of testing the interface without having to actually go back into the Search Center, and you can see what's actually happening before it actually happens to the page. So now let's try that same query. I'm going to try Thunder proposal, and if it works right, we should get our warning. There it is. And you notice we now have all these search results. Now what I didn't show you at the beginning is that there were nothing inside those documents that had said Thunder, but you get the idea. So we totally transformed the user's intent based on what we knew.
Very cool.
Is that cool? Okay. So now we're going to move on to how can we make the looks of our search results look better. We like to customize things. I know there's probably some developers in the room for sure, right? Speak out, devs.
Go devs. Woo! Okay.
I assume most of you. So how do we do this? Well, we do this with display templates. These have been around since 2013, and they let us change the results of just about anything in search. And I'll show you some examples here in just the next slide. It also allows us to add additional metadata. So maybe you have some custom things like, document type or latitude and longitude, which you'll see some later. Those kind of things, we can take those and use them in fun and interactive ways. It's great for content roll-up. If you want to roll up content from various sites, things like that, using the new content search web part, it's the best way to really display results in a quick and easy way, and it's fairly end-user friendly. Again, this is available in SharePoint Online and in SharePoint 2013. So let's look at some examples. So there's a standard search result. You already got those, right? That hover panel you see, you can customize that. The refiners, you see, this is all such, you've seen your search results, but you can customize all of these. Image carousel, right? Any of you used those out of the box now? All parts of display templates. And even, some of the stuff we've seen on past sites. So in the Search Center, there's basically 3 different types. We've got, the center part, where Matt's going to show you the item result. We've got the refiner on the left, and then we've got the hover panel on the right. And so you can customize about all of these. This is the content search web part that you get just by adding it onto a page. We're going to actually use one of those today and change completely how these results look like. And then there's the actual individual pieces of the Search Center, which Matt's going to customize quite a bit in his demo. So we have the control, which represents everything. We have the group, which represents like those actionable set of results that you saw, like when we searched for marketing PR. The item itself, refiners, the hover panel. So each one of those we can customize. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the results that we have in the content search web part, and I get this request a lot dealing with customers and things like that. They're like, hey, we like these results, but maybe we want to see them in a grid instead of a standard line search Google-like thing, right? Yeah, I said Google. And
Bing. He meant Bing.
Bing. So Bing. But maybe they want to see it, And then sometimes they're like, ooh, maybe I can export it to Excel or something like that, right? Have you ever heard that? So we can do this by changing our control template and our item template in the content search web part. The control template separates everything else. It basically provides a wrapper. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to add some table elements instead of some UL elements that it uses currently. And then we're going to edit the item template, and we're going to add those individual rows and columns so that you can have this nice looking grid. Now, item template as well is a little bit tricky, and we'll show some of that in Matt's demo. But basically, there's different spots where you can edit it, and there's common shared areas that are used throughout all of your search results. Now, how this works is there's a JavaScript file that gets generated by an HTML file that you upload, and this sits underneath your master page library. And you put your code inside these little blocks with you can see it by the angle, exclamation, dash, pound, underscore. Can you all say that real fast? And you reference variables with underscore, pound, equals. And when you're actually typing this on the keyboard, you'll realize how difficult it is to actually type. But what it's doing is SharePoint, when you upload it, it goes and produces this JavaScript file, and then you can select it and use it throughout the site. And basically, this JavaScript file gets called natively by SharePoint, and this is how you can actually debug things as well.
So no more XSL.
No more XSL. Who here's
2010
customized
folks,
XSL?
I'm sorry, you got to give up your XSL.
I get clapping every time we mention lots of XSL. I don't know what it is. It had its heyday, right?
That's right.
Inside the control template, there's a variable called CTX, and this provides us access to like the current item or the current item result. So you remember to use the managed properties, all those properties, your site columns, right? Through ctx.currentItem, we can actually get things like the title, the author, the modified date of the document. That's how we're going to get that, and that's how we're going to display these things. So as I showed you, come there as an example, ctx.title or ctx.path, boom, that's how you get those managed properties. You can also use this variable as a context, because that's what CTX stands for, obviously, to communicate between your display templates. So if your item template needs to talk to your group template, they can do so that way by stuffing variables into it, because it's really just JavaScript in the end. So we're going to do an intro to display templates, and we're going to customize the way these results look in a grid. And then later you're going to see more even customizations when Matt takes these and transforms them even more. So this time I'll switch to the correct demo machine. And I'm going to go to our new site. So what I do is I have a site. It's just a team site. It'll come up in just a second. And I've added a content search web part to it. And already out of the box, there are several display templates to work with, right? And so I've got one here, but I've got my search results here. They look, maybe they would be okay if I had images or something in this, but this isn't. This is the image result. So we need to customize this and make it look better, right? So let's do that. We'll put this page into edit mode first. And then we're going to edit the web part. And this operation usually takes longer than it needs to, especially this, because what's going to happen is I'm going to hit edit web part, and the styling on this page will make it appear someplace random where you can't even find it, right? So, there it is, tucked over there.
There
you saw it. Oh, it's gone, right? But, okay. So I talked about control and item, right? So here's the list, but if we wanted instead a slideshow, I could pick that, or if I wanted to list with paging, I could pick that as well. And so what it'll do is it'll actually update it. Now you see a paging icon there, right? This is all built in, and it's all just HTML and JavaScript. And we can also change the layout here, so maybe I want that picture on top, right? And so I go over here, and now the picture's on top. So now you already kind of see an idea of what you can do, but we're going to take it a little bit further, and if everything goes right, we'll have a nice looking grid when we're done. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay, now how do we do this? So what we do is we go over to our master page library, and I'm just going to take my link that goes there. Inside the master page library, there's an error, because apparently, I need to have an error. But inside our master page library, there's a control templates folder where all our files are. And here's all the ones you saw that were in that drop-down list, plus a few others, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this control list.html file, and I'm actually just going to download it. And I'm going to save it and put it in my desktop folder here. And then I'm going to go and open it. Actually, I'm going to rename it first. So we're going to change this from control list to control grid, because we're making a grid. This is the name that we'll see when we're working with it. And then we're going to edit it with Notepad. And the title here is the name that you see in the drop-down. So we're just going to change that to grid. And up here are some properties that you can specify on these. More than we can go in today, unfortunately. And there's a place where we actually include script, right? So if you want to include third-party libraries, jQuery, anything like that, that's where you do it. And you can also include CSS that way as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this div here to control_grid. Again, just to kind of give it a unique name. So we've changed that. And then we need to add a little bit of code to get the element IDs that are going out. So what you do is you generate a unique ID, and then we use that kind of like you would in jQuery, $, _, to get that item by element. So we need that, and so we have to generate a unique one. Otherwise, you'll have no idea how to use it.
They'll
later.
all have the same ID, and it won't be different. It won't be unique.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab a little snippet of code here, and the first one I'm doing here is I'm getting a encoded ID, and this $HTML code is just a standard HTML encode method, and then that ctx.client control, you can see CTX used a bunch, and client control used to get new IDs. And I actually append my own text on it to make it unique. So you start with a base that it generates, which is really just a GUID, right? And you append table, and that's how we're going to use it later down the road when we're trying to reference it directly. The next thing I do is a header row ID, and we'll see why this is used later, because we want to apply some table headings. Now, what we need to do is this list render wrapper method is what gets executed for every item on the list. Actually, sorry, this is what gets executed at the beginning and end. The item render as a result is what gets executed for each one. So right now you see that it's got an LI. We don't want that, right? And we got this other LI, so we're changing this. We're actually going to put a table in instead. Now I want a table to have my IDs and things like that. So I'm going to grab this next snippet, and I'm going to put it right there. So all it does is a table, an ID, and I took that encoded ID we generated up above and gave it a class that we can kind of work with. We also did a TR to host the column names of the table. And then lastly, of course, we need to close our table down beneath it like this, right? So we're done in this particular file for a little bit. And now what we're going to do is go get another file to do each individual item result. So a good one to do for that is item_diagnostic.html. And the reason why I like this one is it's got access to like just about everything. Because what this particular template does is it lets you see the raw data coming back from search. And that can be handy when you're trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm just going to save this, and we're going to call this item_grid row. Give it a nice unique name. We'll go back to it. We're going to edit it. And we're going to do a little more work on it. Up here is where the managed properties come in. We'll kind of show you that here in just a second. And what we're going to do is we need to find the div. So this is just another unique kind of name. So we're going to change this to grid row so it's no longer diagnostic because we're not messing with that anymore. And what we need to do to make it into a table is we need to start here, and we just need to get rid of a bunch of this stuff here. So we're just going to go all the way down to the very bottom of the file and add our own code. So I've done that. And I'm going to go grab this other snippet. Now, you're like probably looking at me, you're like, I'm not going to remember all this. Well, I happen to have all this code out for you on my blog that you can get today. So you won't have to worry. So if you want a grid when you get back to the office, it's easy for you to do. Just drop these two files in, and you're ready to go. But we'll show you how it's built today. So I'm going to paste this last snippet in, and I'll show you what we're kind of doing here. What we're doing is we're going 1 through 10. So this thing can take 10 different managed properties that you can pick and choose to display. And all it's doing is saying, hey, is there a result here? And if not, display it. And I'm going to put it inside of TD. Now, it's also smart. If there's not an item there, it doesn't display the TD. It just writes an empty, an empty result. So that's all there really is to this particular thing. Now we just have to upload it back to our site. Now, you can do this in a lot of different ways. To upload, but I'm just going to use just standard document upload, and we're going to upload these two files. So there's control grid, and you just say save at the bottom, and then we're going to upload the item grid row that we just did. And if I didn't mess up any of the syntax or the JavaScript,
I'll go pray for the demo gods for a
pray
second.
to the demo gods. Hey, it worked at SPC. We'll go back to our home page here. And I'm just going to edit this page and select those new templates that we just specified. So we'll edit this page again. And we'll edit it, and now we're going to pick it over here. And we're going to select grid, and we're going to select, oops, I didn't remember to change the name, so it's probably that one, we'll just guess. And it doesn't like that one, so let's try that one. And I must have messed up something. We'll apply it real quick. And I may have had a JavaScript error, but if that happens, that's all right. I'll show you what we can ultimately do. I know I messed the title up, but we won't take too much time on that. But let me show you what we can actually do with it. Since we're already kind of blowing through a lot of time, I want to make sure Matt has plenty of time. So what I've done is I've actually added that. I've added the grid.
Woo! That's a Martha Stewart. It used to mean pulling the cooked thing out of the oven, not insider trading.
Admittedly, I normally do that demo in like 30 minutes, but I crammed it in 10. So, but what we do, let me tell you what we did here real quick. I wrote those table cells out. We got the property names and put them in the top. And then we used Kendo UI to apply some nice styling to it. That way you can have a nice looking grid. And look, it's even clickable and things like that, so you can sort it and all of that. So great way. This code is out there on my blog. You can get it today. And I'll even push out an update with some of the latest things as well. So go down and get that if you had
Very
need
cool.
for a grid.
Very cool. So that's a third-party library, Kendo UI.
Kendo UI
so
is a third-party
Telerik,
library?
Kendo UI, any of the open source stuff, you can get it all into a search page.
Yep, easy to do.
Outstanding.
All right, let's give it to Matt.
Awesome.
So Matt's going to talk about external data.
Outstanding. So how many of you folks are using the BCS, either in 2010, 2013? Yep, awesome. How many of you are crawling your BCS data? Awesome, that's great. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about. So business connectivity services allows us to connect to sources of data that don't necessarily fall into the buckets that Microsoft gives us. We can connect to data, we can connect to databases, web services, but we can also write custom connectors. We can write our own .NET code that SharePoint will execute and go get the information. What that means is even though BCS, as it says on the slide, is SharePoint 2013 only, if you've been attending or you decide to go back and watch the hybrid sessions that Microsoft has been doing, you can now push your BCS information into the cloud where it can be searched in Office 365.
How cool is that?
So that's very cool. I mean, we gave him a round of applause for that, so you can give me one. Woo! I'll take that. So what I'm saying is, even though the slide says SharePoint 2013 only, because the BCS process does run on-prem, you can still push these results into the cloud once Microsoft enables that feature for SharePoint 2013 and ultimately SharePoint 2016. Okay, so when we're looking at how do we get help to do this, this is the book. Okay?
Well, that's a 2010 book, isn't it?
It is a 2010 book. It hasn't changed that much. This is a $50 book. It is about this thick, and it is worth every single penny.
Hands down.
If you are on a SharePoint project where you need to write a security trimmer for BCS, this is the book. If you need to extract documents from a database and rehydrate them in your search results, this is the book. It's an incredible book by Scott Hillier. Okay. So the way that the BCS crawling works is there's really three components. There's two service applications, unless you're using the Secure Store service, in which case there would be three. But we create the business connectivity service, and then we create a model file that connects us to our line of business data. From the search service application, as long as that model file meets a couple of criteria, I can register that model file as a content source. I can start to get information from my external content types. Crawl them, store them in the database. That means that when I'm in the search center and I execute a search, I'm not hitting the database. I'm just hitting the index, so it's screaming fast. It's not until the user actually clicks through the search result to view the BCS profile page that they actually hit the database. Okay?
So Matt, this might be a good way, like even if you have a third-party application, or not, sorry, a custom application, maybe it's .NET or something else, right? And you don't want to implement search, is this a good option?
Absolutely. Great way to do it. In fact, we've used this against just plain old XML files that happen to be containing the data that we want to present in search. So you can do a lot with this to customize the way that your results show up. If you're creating your model file, the first thing you want to make sure you have is that show in search UI property at the top of your line of business system. And then what you want to do is have a finder and a specific finder that will allow you to find all of the records, or allow search to get all of the records by ID, and then one record after another by ID. Then there's a couple of extra little bells and whistles you can add if you want. You want to show off that you're a BCS smarty pants? Then you can add the author field, the description field, and the display URI field. That's where the end user will be directed. When they view the search result, they'll see whatever field in your BCS entity is in that, just in the title field will show up. The author field will show up as the author. The description field will show up as the description. And the URL will be where they can click through to.
Now Matt, can you add custom columns, for example, to that of your own from the database?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You pull them in through your entity, and you populate those with the titles of the entity columns.
So that means you could import any kind of columns that are in the database, right?
Absolutely.
And show them in your search.
And have them show up. That's exactly right. And I'll show you that in just a sec. So there's another option instead of using the display URI field, and I'll show you that as we go through. the demo. There we go. So I'm going to show you the end result first, and then we'll show you how it's all put together. So what I've got is my standard SharePoint Search Center here. And I've got customers that are pet stores. So if I do a search for pets, I start to see some of these results down here showing up as pet stores. In fact, what I've done is gone in and created a result source exclusively for my customers, and then I've added a vertical so that I can search those customers. Since this is external data, it's getting into the search index. I can make it refinable, and so I can have custom refiners over here. So all of these custom refiners are display templates like Corey showed you. These are just refiner type display templates. So in this case, I'm in my search center. I can choose the silver partners. And I notice there's a lot of silver partners that have sold more than $50,000 worth of our stuff. So now I can do BI in the search center, and I can contact these account managers who work for me and find out why these aren't gold partners. None of this hit the database. This is all straight out of the search index. Now, one of the things I know is that I've got a pet store, and they're having some trouble. So they call me up, and I look them up. So I've got the unique pets. So I type in unique. It brings up unique pets. It happens to be just one of them. I guess they are. And I look at my display template, and my display template is actually taking the address of this store, throwing it out to Bing, and giving me back a map to their location. It's also showing me their address and their year-to-date sales. So right away, I'm getting some information about them. But I can take that a step further. This is a standard BCS profile page with just a little bit of extra XSL. So those of you who are doing 2010, don't despair. You still get to do XSL, because the BCS web parts still require you to do a little bit of XSL to be able to change the look and feel.
Who doesn't like XSL?
Heck yeah. So what I want to show you, though, is how this page is configured. If I'm looking at this URL, it's just a web part page. It's a web part page that has some extra web parts thrown onto it. In the case of the middle web part, that's the BCS item. But this web part over here is a search web part. A search web part that's pulling from the query string and taking me over here to my customer issues list. On my customer issues list, I'm using an external data column tied to the exact same BCS source to tag the internal issues that we're having with this customer. So now what I've got on my search results page is I have a customer 360, albeit a small one, that's showing me external data from a line of business database, as well as issues that are being tracked inside of SharePoint, all consolidated onto a single page for this customer.
So you're literally combining structured and unstructured data in SharePoint, and data from your line of business system, all in one place in one easy.
Absolutely. So I create the external content type one time, and that's in the BCS. So if I go into Business Data Connectivity Services, here's my customer. Now my customer is defined with different properties associated with it, like the company name, last name, first name of the contact. And instead of using that URL field, what I did was I defined a profile page action. So this URL, by default, becomes the URL for the search result. If it doesn't have it embedded in the model file, all you have to do is create a BCS profile page and then associate it as the default action. Then it will become the search result page that you use in your search center. Now, I wish I could grab this and drag it all the way out, but you got to trust me that this page, customers.aspx, it's just a URL that I created. It's a page that I created, and then at the end, it takes parameters. In this case, it takes the customer ID parameter, and then this little replacer 0 that I have, I simply come in here and choose which field I want to be replaced into the curly brace 0 format string.
So is that just a page in a document library that you put in there?
It's just a page in a document library. So once I've got the edit action set up, anywhere I am, so if I happen to be on this customer page and I go look at this, this becomes the same view profile is going to take me right back to that same page. So on every list that you use this data as an external data column, you'll be taken to this page. Does that make sense? We're not actually crawling this page. We're crawling our model file. The page just becomes that landing zone for the people who are finding your BCS data. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate this page. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to choose to go into Site Settings. I'm going to go into Site Contents. And what I did is I created a library just called BCS Profiles. You can create this library anywhere you like, as long as your users all have access to it. If you use SharePoint Designer and create the default profile page, it throws it off into some thoroughly obscure location like _catalogs, _mydomain_.com.
You'll never find it.
And you'll never find it. And it's just this horribly long URL. So what I'm going to do is go, and I've configured this library, one little side note, I've configured this library so the default page is a web part page. So I can bring this up and I can call this one Ignite.
Oops.
And then
you spelled that worse than I did.
I did. The good thing is it doesn't have to be spelled right. Ignite. That was terrible.
Pretty sure there's no H's in Ignite,
I'll
man.
get there. I will get there. Good thing I got my glasses on, right?
I mean, acquisition was hard, but...
Okay, so let's try that. Let's try this. Let's do that. There we go. So I got my page. So I need a couple of web parts. And one of the things that stops people from getting this right is all the errors that are going to show up. And I'll show you the fix for that. So what I'm going to do is over here in the left column, I'm going to open out Business Data, and I'm going to grab the Business Data Item Builder. That one reads the query string. Then I'm going to add another web part, and this is the Business Data Item. Okay? And then I'm going to come over here and I'll add a search web part. And I'm going to add a search results web part. Throw that over there. Now, these are funny web parts. They like to be configured. So I'm going to open the tool pane. And I'm going to tell it what kind of content type it's going to expect. And in my case, it's expecting that customer's content type. Once I've got the customer's content type in place, I can tell it to save. And then I come down here and I connect it to my business data item builder. And now it's going to throw a huge error. Something must be horribly wrong. Don't worry, nothing's wrong. So I'm going to stop editing, and I'll show you that this actually works by coming back up here and choosing to put...
It's because the customer ID was missing, right? So it just...
That's right.
Didn't know which one
and
to
I've
pull.
got a good customer ID, 23672, and it should show me a customer. Okay, so we're halfway there. We're halfway there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this web part. I'm going to edit my search results web part to show me the internal information. And so Corey showed you how you can change the query here. And in my case, what I want to do is I want to get my query not from the search box. I want to get my query from a parameter on the URL. Okay, and the parameter on the URL is going to be, that's right, you guessed it, customer ID. So once I've got the customer ID in there, I happen to have a special refinable managed metadata column or managed metadata managed property that I'm going to use. It is cryptically called refinable string 00. And we're going to make sure that that equals our customer value there. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part is that would get any values for customer ID. But what I want to do is make sure that the content class is just my customer issue. So I'm going to come in here and choose content class equals a manual value. In this case, we get to use the SharePoint Ninja foo sts underscore list item underscore issue tracking. So that says just get me issues related to my customer. If I test that, run over here and test it, show more, I can come down here and make sure that that's working. And did I get it right? I didn't. We can't have two that don't work.
It looks like you have a space there. Is that the problem?
Here we go. There's an equals there. Test that query. There they are. Choose OK. So there was a little space in there that was causing it a little bit of heartburn. So stop editing. And now we've got our page. So all I would do is make the URL to this page be the search result page or the action page, and then your whole system works, and you're getting internal data, you're getting external data.
Is that cool?
Thank you. Back on slides. Thank you. All right. So I want to talk content enrichment. This is the coolest service that'll tank your farm. It is. It was built with fear in mind. Okay? What can you do with content enrichment? Well, you can enhance the managed properties in search. So let's say that you don't have the columns in SharePoint, but you know that you have some of the data in SharePoint and you want to go out to an external system and come back and load the search managed properties with that data. That's what this does. It only runs in SharePoint 2013. It runs at crawl time. When you initiate a crawl, it evaluates a trigger. If the trigger is met, it sends the content out. Oh, heck, I've got a slide. I'll show you how all this stuff works. You'll love it. You can also inject custom logic in. So you can do sort of what Corey was talking about. If this, then that. If these two managed properties are this way, then go do something else magical. You can also validate or clean up existing properties. You can clear properties out. Maybe you're looking for secret code words that you don't want to show up in your search index. This tool can do that for you. Corey's got a great blog post that's on that bit.ly. You can get, by the way, you can get these slides off the Yammer feed. The slide deck has been updated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the demo. Wow, this thing really has a short leash.
You have to press it like hard.
Yeah. Okay, so we have, there it is, yay. I'm going to start the demo because I've got to run a crawl. Crawl only takes a minute or two, so we'll do a little soft shoe while that's going on. So we'll jump back over to 7.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the scenario. I've got a SharePoint on-prem farm, and I've got some guys who are friends of mine. They're the Smith brothers. They're right here. Okay. These are my friends, the Smith brothers. That's Carlos, Will, and Matt, who offered to be part of my demo. And what I want to do, since I took this photo with my phone, it's automatically geotagged. So you see over here it says Chicago, Illinois. It's because the latitude and longitude are embedded in the image, and this client photo gallery is going out and figuring out where that is. But these guys, we got to figure out who these guys are. So I have already done this once, and I'll tell you why in a sec. But I'm going to go ahead. There's Matt Smith. And here's Will Smith. I know you thought he was different, but he's hiding in our audience. There's Carlos. And here's me. Change the names to protect the guilty. Okay. So we've got their names on the file. We've added metadata to this. If I go into properties and I look at the details for this, here's Matt Smith, Will Smith, etc. And then down here is the latitude and longitude. But Photo Gallery doesn't put the location on. So we're going to fix that with content enrichment. I'm going to copy this file. We're going to load it into SharePoint here. And then I'm simply going to upload it into my next opportunity to show you pictures of my dog.
They're not on the screen yet.
Guaranteed. There she is. Okay, so we're going to take the Ignite gang and we're going to drop them in here. It's going to upload that file to SharePoint. And what I'm going to do is run an incremental crawl. And what should happen if the demo gods are appeased and everything's going well is instead of showing you thousands of lines of code, which only do image processing, because in the code, there's really only 8 lines that do the augmentation, and I'll be more than happy to send you this sample. But what will happen is you'll see all the debug data is going to come screaming out when I start this crawl. So trust me, it'll all make sense in a moment. Go into Central Administration, we'll jump into the Search Service application, Content Sources, and I'm going to kick off a local incremental crawl. There we go. Okay, so what's happening? Well, what's happening is that in the phase between crawling and indexing, SharePoint 2013 is doing content processing. Content processing is a very busy service. It's doing 4 important things. It's doing document parsing, content enrichment, maybe if you set it up. Then it's doing word breaking, and then it's doing custom entity extraction, which is another thing if you set it up. So what we do is we tell SharePoint that if a certain trigger is met, then send that information out to a URL that we control. This does not run on your SharePoint farm. It runs on a remote server that you create, that you install, that you change. Okay? So using the app model, if you will, of get off my farm, we now are doing this away from SharePoint. So if the trigger rule is met, it sends the information from the index that's about to go into the index out to the custom web service. We process it. In my case, I'm going to take the latitude and longitude. I'm going to send it out to Bing. I'm going to get the address back, and I'm going to stuff the address, the latitude and longitude, and the people's faces that are tagged back into the index. So what that looks like is picture of Ruby taken in Carmel, gets pushed out, latitude and longitude goes out to Bing, address comes back from Bing, and the location managed property comes back into content enrichment.
Wow, Matt, are you a SharePoint MVP or a PowerPoint MVP?
PowerPoint MVP, baby.
Impressive.
Okay. So how do you register queues? How do you register the content extensibility web service with PowerShell? You get an instance of your search service application. You create a new config. Then you configure the endpoint of your web service. 1. You get 1. That's how much we fear this. There can be only 1. And then you tell it what properties you're going to send. In my case, I send out the people in media property, because if there are already people on that people in media, I'm just going to add new people to it. I also tell it that I'm going to output latitude, longitude, people in media, and location. And then the next thing I do is I configure the trigger. Now this is a stupid trigger. This is simple trigger. Send every JPEG file.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do content type equals document. Okay? Don't do that. I also do a couple other things like send raw data, because I want to send the entire file. It only sends up to 8 megs. Okay, so there are some limits to what you can do. And then failure mode warning. Basically, if it fails, it's going to write it to the log as a warning, not as a critical failure in the crawl logs. And then you upload that back to the search service application by hosting your content enrichment configuration. You get 1 endpoint, which means it is up to you to prevent the crawler from going from documents per second to seconds per document. Okay?
So I guess what you're trying to say, Matt, I don't think we reiterate it enough. This web service gets called
a lot
every time for every document that matches
my trigger.
Trigger.
That's right.
So if you specify content type equals document, guess what? Every document gets.
You might as well
the call
just
to that
say,
web
if
service.
true equals true, bring down my farm.
I don't care how good your code is.
Okay. So what about those images? Well, what happened while we were making fun of the content extensibility web service is our crawler ran and it found our image. And so you'll notice it found Matt Smith, it found Will Smith. For some reason, it didn't find me and Carlos, but that's okay. I probably just messed up when I was putting it together. But so right there it says Matt Smith and Will Smith were found. It even has the rectangle around their face.
Yeah, it sure does.
But then also look at it has Mines Drive, Chicago, Illinois, because when the Bing Map web service doesn't quite know what address you're at, it'll just give you a general location. You know, I'm sure that that's never happened to you while you were stumbling out of a bar with Uber trying to find out where you were going. But this is its best guess, that we're somewhere on Mines Drive in Chicago. It also found the Nokia Lumia and stuff like that. So what that means is that not only can I come over here and again gratuitously show you photos of my dog by doing something like, I don't know, how about photos of Ruby taken, there it is, in Carmel. Right? So this is using that same logic with a custom display template to show the location of the image.
Now that syntax is you use there, Matt, that's just a query rule, right?
It's kind of tricky, yeah. I'll show you that.
That's pretty fancy.
So if I do photos of, who was it? It was Will, right? Taken in Chicago. Then we should get Will.
There you go. How cool is that?
And we even get the geolocation onto the map there for us so that we can see where that is. So that's kind of cool. It only runs on your farm. This will not work in the hybrid situation either because the crawler that's running in the 2013 environment, at least as it was stated yesterday in the session, it's a different crawler. You don't get content processing. So this won't work with that hybrid situation that we were talking about.
So is there anything we can do with Office 365 then?
You know, I'm glad you asked. So let's advance this once just so that we can. Okay, so the whole thing is, what about Office 365? What Office 365, when we decided I didn't want to give you the bad news and have everybody bail when they found out that they can't do that, I decided to make a new demo. So we want to add, the business problem is that we want to add data to the images so that they can be discovered by using that cool, images of Carlos, Matt, and Will in Chicago. The problem is not, I've got a hammer that's content extensibility and I want to use it everywhere I can and I can't use it in Office 365. So let's solve the business problem. So basically what I did is I uploaded the same, I'm showing, okay, good. I uploaded the same image up to Office 365 a little earlier because what I really wanted to do was write some PowerShell. And so what I did, and you can do this any number of ways, I just chose to do it this way, is I wrote a PowerShell script that essentially does the same thing. And I broke it out into a bunch of scripts. They are horrible. If you guys want them, I'll give them to you. I'd be more than happy to after I clean them up a little bit. So I don't have a blog post about this yet, but I will. And that's, I process the files. So I use the SharePoint REST API to request the files that have not been processed yet. They have latitude and longitude, but they don't have their location. And then I pull the files down locally. Then I rip through the exact same image processing code that I used for the Content Extensibility web service. I call out to Bing. I get the locations back. And then I update SharePoint, but I don't upload the image again because I don't need to. The image is in SharePoint. I just update the item. Smart? Yes, Matt.
Smart.
That's smart. Okay? Your average SharePoint MVP would upload the whole darn image again.
That's right. I was just going to upload it.
Okay. So, how do we do this? Well, this is a search session, so I have to show you one salient point, and that's this URL right here is using the SharePoint REST API. You guys see that okay? So I'm using the API search query, and then I have the query says content type equals geolocated photo, and then I have needs processing equals 1. Needs processing happens when I'm sitting in my library. If I go to all pictures, what you'll see is that when I uploaded that photo, there's this needs processing column that's set to no, but by default, when you drag and drop a document, it automatically sets it to yes, because you cannot search for null in SharePoint. So what you do is set a default flag that goes up so that I can say needs processing equals true means give me the documents that haven't been processed yet. I can simulate that by showing you a view. So here's the needs processing view. If you were a mere mortal, you would do something lame like use camel and call the view. But we're search people, so we use search, because that means it'll work across the entire farm anywhere you want to run it. Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at happy hour coming up, and I've got 14 minutes. We are golden. And so I just cursed myself by doing that. I just want you all to know that. Okay, so here we go. Run the script, log into,
This is the hardest part of the demo right here.
I'm telling you, I don't want to give it out, and you just blew my mojo. Okay. My whole goal is to not show you the password for my client. Okay, so we're downloading the file. The file is actually being downloaded into just the downloads folder here so that I can process it. Then it goes in and it says, look, I found Will Smith, Matthew McDermott, and Carlos Smith. Okay? And then it found that we were on Minds Drive. So all of that worked. So what we should be able to do is not do that, but let's go to Office 365. And let's look at those vacation photos. So now if I go to Needs Processing, there's no files because we processed it. And by the way, we flipped the flag that it's been processed. So if I go back to All Pictures, and I go down and find here's the Ignite gang. Okay, so there's Will Smith, Matthew, and Carlos. Okay, we're all there. There's our image. That's all working. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow about this long because the biggest problem with trying to do a demo of Office 365 search is that it's got to crawl my content now, right?
Yeah, that could happen in 10 seconds or...
It happened in 28 seconds the last time I did this. So let me show you what I'm hoping is going to happen. What I'm hoping is going to happen is if I do photos of Ruby, it's going to show me photos of Ruby. And see, it says geolocated photos of Ruby. And it has my custom display template showing you the photo of Ruby. I actually improved it so I could show you even more photos of my dog. And I have the image location there as well. And so what I'm really hoping would happen is I could also say taken in Carmel. And I get those as well. These are taken in Carmel. That's kind of cool.
Very nice.
Okay. So here we go. Taken in Chicago.
Wait for it.
Gosh, it's awfully quiet. You can hear my heart beating.
I'll paste this search service.
Telling you. No, don't do the. Oh, it'll come. Okay, hang on. How about photos of Smith? Nope, that's not it. Photos of Will. Come on, you can do it. Come on, you can do it. Here we go. It's going to happen, I promise.
I think it's been 28 seconds.
I think it has. I think I got to call Neil Hodgkinson and find out where my photos are. How about taken? Let's do that again. Taken in Chicago. It'll come back. While that's coming back, I do have a little soft shoe that I do want to do. Let me talk about this query rule. There is a difference between Office 365 and SharePoint on-prem when it comes to query rules. In the on-prem one, you saw me do photos of Ruby taken in Chicago. When I wrote that query rule on-prem, I used regex. You can't use regex in Office 365 right now. So what you do is you go into your query rules and you do a little bit of magic using keyword query language. So what I did is created a query so that I could do photos of Corey, photos of Will, and it would return those geolocated photos. So this is taking that uncomfortable pause. There it goes.
Yes, yes.
And I'm going to change my result source to local SharePoint results. And I'm going to change my query. You guys are leaving before the good stuff. It's going to happen, I'm telling you. So here's my geo photos. Let me show you this rule, because it's just a little different when you're in Office 365. You have to kind of rethink the way this works. So I use the same action term rule that Corey created earlier. I put in the text photos of with a semicolon and taken in, because I don't want that in my query. I don't want that in my query.
That's just noise, right?
It's just noise. But it trips the rule. When I look at the rule, it's a promoted block. And in this case, I'm taking what's left after the taken photos of and taken in, and I'm feeding that back into a query that will return only the geolocated photos, and then it will match that term for those specific properties of people in media or the location field. So right here is my query, and the query basically says the content type is geolocated photo, And then we say either the image location matches the subject terms or people in media matches the subject term. So that's how Chicago would show up in location but not in people, and will would show up in people and not in Chicago, and it works for both. So we'll do a test over here to show you how this goes. I can come in here and type Chicago, do a test, and oh my gosh, there it is.
Does that mean it's working?
That must mean it's working. So let's get the heck out of this.
I don't think I'll save it.
And this is where it's going to take a while to sit there and just thwart my efforts at making this happen. Okay, so we've got that in, and we can test it here as well. Taken in Chicago. We can see the query transformation occur where it's going to use that query term Chicago over here where it says geolocated photos, content type. It has the location or the location. And I'm done messing around. Let's find these guys. So there's my photo taken in Chicago. Okay. And then I can do photos of the Smith gang, and I should get the same result. Okay? Cool?
Very cool.
Okay. But it's just a matter of figuring out what SharePoint Online does well, which is it indexes very quickly. I don't know anybody. If I did that on your farms back home, am I waiting 15 minutes or am I waiting an hour for the incrementals? 4 hours for your incrementals? It happens really fast in Office 365. So, what works where? The SharePoint on-prem, query rules, display templates, business connectivity, and the content extensibility web service. The only piece in there that won't work after the hybrid patches come out is the content extensibility web service, but now you know how you can do it in Office 365.
It's a great workaround.
For SharePoint Online, query rules, display templates, the hybrid connections for BCS, and I put that cues on there before I heard the final news, which is they're not supporting content extensibility. So this slide deck will need to be edited for that. You guys have been more than generous with your time. We'll take questions if you have any. Can I get a round of applause for the Smith brothers? Woo!